Welcome to part 2 of the inside job of connecting and renewing our relationship with our body. Today we're talking about quieting the inner critical voice. So I'm going to start by sharing, let's see if I can do that again here. Start by sharing what is the critical inner voice. And so the critical inner voice was a term coined by psychologist Robert Firestone, and he says it undermines positive feelings about ourselves, about others. It fosters self-criticism, inwardness, distrust, self-denial, and a retreat from goal-oriented activities. So first I want to say that having an inner voice is natural. We all are going to have sort of a voice that guides us and is providing an inner dialogue. The question here is this inner voice something that's encouraging, something that's positive, or is it something that is actually deterrent? Is it something that's causing harm? And that's where the critical inner voice comes into play. So today I want to share with you some of the ways that we can start to quiet this inner voice. Because if we can't quiet it, if we don't know how to be with it, it can really cause havoc in our day-to-day lives, in our goals, in how we meet ourselves, and especially in relationship to our body, can cause a lot of harm. So I want to start talking about how can we start to quiet the inner voice. So the first step is to identify the critical voice. So if you have a pen and paper nearby, or if you're watching this on a replay, I'll invite you to grab a pen and paper. And I'm going to invite you to think about when this critical voice comes up for you. What is it usually saying to you? Usually our critical voice is very specific. It has a usual tone, and it has words and phrases that it uses all the time. Okay, so I invite you to tune into what that is and write it down. The other thing that I invite you to do to start identifying this critical voice is to notice when it comes up. What activities are you doing? Are you at your job? Or is it connected to a relationship? Is it connected to a specific thing that you do? When does this critical voice come up? Are there certain emotions attached to this critical voice? So is it shaming? Is it guilting? Is it angry? Just capturing that as well, writing that down. Again, part of quieting the critical voice is to identify when it's coming up in a mindful way. Mindfulness is a huge part of quieting the critical voice. So just being mindful about what's coming up for you. Okay, so the next step in starting to quiet the inner voice is to understand where this critical inner voice comes from. And so we'll do another little activity here. I'll invite you to tune into, and if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. If not, that's okay. I invite you to think back to the first time that you heard this voice. So maybe it was when you were a child, maybe it was when you were like a young teen, and this voice came from a parent, maybe came from a teacher or a close friend. And it might have been it might have not been a critical voice at that time. It might have been, I'm trying to protect you voice. But really underneath that, you took it on as a belief, and then that belief became something that at some point was supporting you and staying safe, but then eventually started to hinder your ability to freely express, to be authentically you, to show up in the world in the unique way that you are. So I invite you to think back about when you heard this phrase, these phrases that your inner voice, this critical inner, now that's your critical inner voice, first shared with you. Okay. So it's super important to understand and identify when this, which was step one, which is when does this voice come up? What is it saying? What activities are you doing when this voice comes up? 2 is, okay, where does this voice come from? And usually has a figure attached to it. It could be, like I said, a parent, a teacher, but now it's become your own critical voice. Okay. So step 3 is, how do we change how we act on this critical voice? So part of change starts with mindful awareness. So the first step, and this is what I share with my coaching clients, is to have a little notebook. And I know it can be intense at first time when we're starting to look at all of the ways that we not so positively support ourselves through our thoughts and through our inner voice, is to write down when these voices are coming up. And so noticing when they're coming up, because then we can be aware of when we need to pause. So pausing, if we can be aware of the voices, is the next step, right? So first step is developing awareness. And that's where, if you have a mindfulness practice, a meditation practice, a yoga practice, any sort of introspective journaling practice, like any sort of introspective practice, it'll be really helpful in supporting you to start to notice when this voice is coming up, because that's the first step. So the next step is to pause and to choose how you are going to react to this voice. Are you going to just witness it and be like, okay, there you are, inner critical voice? You can name your inner critical voice. You could be like, there you are, my bully. There you are, my nagging friend. There you are. And you can be playful with it as well, because usually sometimes being playful with things helps not make it so intense. Okay, so there you are. Okay, I see you. Yeah, thank you for letting me know that you are scared about this, because usually the critical voice is trying to keep you safe, but not in a positive way, right? It's just, it's kind of nagging. It's fearsome. It kind of puts you in a spin. So you could say like, hey, I see you. I hear you. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. And gently push it away. This is going to take practice. This isn't something that is cultivated through time and practice. So gently let it go and continue with what you're doing. Now, the gently letting go might need to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Supported with a nourishing action. So, okay, I realize that I'm actually kind of freaked out about the situation right now. What can I do for myself to support myself? Maybe that's taking a couple of deep breaths. Maybe it's giving myself a hug. Maybe it's, which it leads to the next step, which is starting to rewire and reframe the inner critical voice, is saying something positive to myself. So something that is believable and possible and positive in that moment to help you keep going. So the next slide here is rewiring the inner critical voice. So once you have written out some of what your critical phrases are, those phrases that you have on repeat about yourself, about your body, about how you're showing up in the world, any of those phrases that you have them written out, once you have them written out, you can start to see what's going on underneath the surface. So you can start to rewrite them. Obviously, we can't go from 1 to 100. Like if we are feeling shame around X thing, I don't know what's going on for you. So if we're feeling shame, we can't go from feeling to feeling proud. We might go from shame to feeling, I feel okay with this. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So rewriting your critical inner voice can be paused and gentle in how you go from being a full like, no, you can't do this, to okay, maybe we can, and here, let's start to change the phrases of how we talk to ourselves. So that's step 4, is starting to change the way that you talk to yourself. So 1 is identifying, 2 is noticing where it comes from and when it's showing up, 3 is starting to meet yourself with compassion and starting to change the phrases that you're saying to yourself. So I hope that's helpful. Let me think if there's something else that I wanted to share. Yeah, so if there's any questions, you can pop them into the chat right now. And the reason that I'm bringing this topic to the surface is because I think that we all have these critical voices, and they can get louder at different times in our life, depending on what's going on for us. But specifically, I wanted to bring it up in relation to renewing our relationship with our body. I am doing work, I do a lot of work with women around spirituality, around connecting to the body through movement and through mindfulness. And a lot of times there's a disconnection to the body. And this is usually caused because we don't want to meet ourselves in our body. So usually there's an illness, or usually there's a negative belief about the body, and the critical voice can come up, right? So one of the ways that we can start to befriend our body, the inside job of befriending our body, is through knowing what our critical voice is, starting to shift the critical voice, and treating ourselves with more kindness. So I hope you enjoyed this short little talk on quieting the inner critical voice. If you want to reach out to me, you can via direct message, or you can reach out to me via email, or via my website. And I'll be back next Tuesday for part 3 of this mini Instagram Live series. All right. Hope you're having a great Tuesday, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.